we've chosen the prestigious Royal Johannesburg in Kensington to be the venue for our interview with Ewen Murray, Sky commentator extraordinaire. Ewen Murray, we hear his voice whenever we're listening to the majors or the World Championships, the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup, and of course, the Nedbank Golf Challenge. Ewen Murray was also a terrific player. As a junior golfer, he won the Scottish Boys and the World Junior Championship. As a professional, he won a couple of tournaments on the African Tour. But what interests me about Ewen is that he grew up exactly the same way that I did. His dad was the professional at Babington Golf Club in Edinburgh. And Ewen grew up in the golf shop and alongside his father when he taught golf. He's got some interesting stories to tell. So it's time now to join Ewen Murray. Let's start off with how you got into the game, the early days in Edinburgh.
Well, it started, I guess, at Gleneagles. My mother worked in the hotel at Gleneagles, and my father was the assistant professional to Jack McLean at Gleneagles. Came to Babberton in the early 50s, Babberton just outside Edinburgh, about 5 miles to the west of it. And he was pro there for 35 years, so my youth was spent not at school, but at the golf club.
And did you spend much time, with your dad in the shop, teaching, watching how he taught people?
He was a very good teacher. He taught some of the best amateurs that were around at that time. He was very much a club professional, like your own father. And my youth was spent virtually either on the golf course or in the pro shop.
And you yourself, you were a terrific junior golfer.
Yeah, I was very lucky to have him to guide you along in the formative years, which are so important. I did have a good junior record. I don't quite know what happened after that, but I had a spell where the game seemed fairly easy, and I was reasonably successful.
Well, reasonably, that's an understatement. You won the Scottish Boys and then you went over to America to play in the World Junior Championships.
First time out of Edinburgh was on a jumbo jet over to Los Angeles, and I remember landing there and looking out the window thinking, this is a much bigger place than I'm used to. But it was a great experience and a wonderful thing to be able to do at that age, and of course they still do it today.
Who were some of the players that played in that World Junior?
Craig Stadler is the one that stands out. Craig won the main event, 17 years of age he was then. And he looked at 17 the same way as he looks now at 57 or whatever he is.
And his son doesn't look very different either.
His son is just a younger edition, yes, but very successful. Earlier this season, Kevin Stadler getting his first one in the PGA Tour. But Craig Stadler stands out. There was two twins from Hawaii, the Baranaba twins. They were very good players as well. But never heard of them after that, which surprised me.
Straight after that, you turned professional.
I did. Things were different then. It was difficult to play amateur golf unless you had money. You needed entry fees, you needed transport to get there, you needed hotels, and we didn't quite simply have that money. I didn't fancy working for a living, so I turned professional. So I turned professional on November the 1st, 1971, just after my 17th birthday.
And those early years on the European tour were fun. I'm thinking of some of the characters, Brian Barnes, Tommy Horton, Morris Bembridge and Malcolm Gregson, and of course Neil Cole's a great player. I mean, those years were wonderful.
They were. There was a dozen players who could win around that time, and things have moved on from there. You've now got maybe 50, 60 players that could win at the start of a week, but the people you mentioned were part of a team that I was involved in, British Caledonian Lions, and we were very lucky because with the airline contract we could play in the winter in South America. We came down to Zambia, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, and if we didn't have that contract we wouldn't have been able to afford to do it. So we travelled as a team and they became great friends, and even to this day Brian Barnes is my next door neighbour.
But not only were they terrific players, but they were great characters. It was fun to play the tour in those days.
Yeah, and they were great life coaches. Di Rees, I remember, was my chaperone. And he left me at the airport in Nairobi, and I never saw him again for 4 weeks. But if you were under 18 in these days, you had to have a chaperone, and Di Rees was the man for me. And as I said, they were great life coaches. They taught you how to behave. They taught you how to behave in people's homes, because we didn't stay in hotels then. We stayed with members of golf clubs, which again was a great experience, and many friends were made down the years.
Now, you mentioned Di Rees. People watching this show would more than likely have no idea who Di Rees was, or someone like Neil Coles.
Well, Neil's coming up 80 and still playing great golf now. Rees was a fiery Welshman, as you know, who had a great Ryder Cup record. He went on to captain what was then the GB&I Ryder Cup team before Europe got involved in the present-day Ryder Cup. But they were great players of their time. And if you look back in the history books, you'll see a lot of mentions of Di Rees and Neil Coles.
Your successes as a professional, you didn't win on the European part of the tour. You won down in Africa, but you came close a number of times. Something let you down.
Yeah, I had a putting problem at a very young age. I had a putting problem at 15. I remember the date, the time, the course, when something happened, an involuntary movement in my hands. And I got over that fairly quickly, but it was always in the back of my mind, and it came back. And I struggled to hold putts from 18 inches, 2 feet. Now, long putts weren't a problem, but I did have a serious problem from short distance.
That almost sounded like you were talking dirty, an involuntary movement in my hands.
It was dirty. It was very dirty. It was ugly.
What do you mean by that? What actually happened?
I remember it was the first green at Longnidry Golf Club, which is down near Muirfield. And I was off at 8:20, and I had 2 shots on the first green, 7-8 feet away, and thought, well, I'll just knock that in for a birdie, because that's what young kids did. They never thought they were going to lose. Never thought they were going to miss. And I saw that the backswing was short, it was jerky, it had no rhythm, no flow. And I spent the whole day trying to hold putts from 15 inches and tiny backswing, and came home and wondered what had happened. I mean, I'd read about yips and Ben Hogan and Sam Snead. Sam Snead was a side saddle man to try and get rid of that. So it's happened to good players down the years, but I couldn't figure out why it happened to me, but it did.
What difference would it have made to your life if you discovered the long putter at the age of 15?
Oh, enormous. I mean, I did get over it, and I got to about 31, 32 before it came back. But if I'd had the long putter then, my career wouldn't have finished at 35, 36. It probably would have been extended. You keep yourself relatively fit. I think golfers are fitter today. So your career is longer. And then you have the added bonus of playing when you're over 50, which you didn't have then.
Golf was very fortunate, because after that group of players, the Barneses, the Hortons, etc., came probably the most exciting group of players that Europe has ever had. Seve, Lyle, Faldo, Langer, Woozy, and you played right through those 2 eras.
Yeah, 2 very different eras, because when Seve lit up the European Tour, he came at just the right time. The European Tour went on its own in the early 70s, led by John Jacobs, and it was difficult. It was extremely difficult. There was a body of players in the PGA that didn't want that to happen. There was people against it, people for it, and Seve pitched up in 1976 just when we needed a superstar, and superstars don't come any greater than him. Sponsors became easier. His charismatic smile, his swashbuckling style, it was just perfect for that time. And without that, I'm not sure the European Tour would be what it is today. That was a very significant moment in its history.
Let's not forget Tony Jacklin.
Also, Tony Jacklin, that was just before the transition of the European Tour, winning at Royal Lytham, winning in Minnesota. No one had ever thought that was going to happen, and Jacklin was at the right age too, right in the middle of his 20s, best 10 years coming up straight after that. So yes, Jacklin was very important at that time as well, because he was still at the top of his form, although he wasn't going to go on and win another major. He came close on several occasions and stayed around for a long time. And Jacklin was the the boy next door. His father was a lorry driver. Jacqueline was the boy next door that came and conquered not only the Open Championship, but the American Championship as well. So, yes, Jacqueline first, but Seve just at the right time.
Just staying with Jacqueline a second, he was robbed of 2 majors. At the Open at St Andrews, when it started to, we had that huge thunderstorm, and then at Muirfield when Lee Trevino chipped it in from off the back of the green.
Yes, especially after Trevino had handed it virtually to him, because that's the way Trevino was. He spoke all the time. He bounced around like a rubber ball. And Jacqueline could have been forgiven, I think, for what happened, but he let his guard drop at that time. He chips in, Jacqueline chips on at 17 3-putts, and it's gone. But I think you're right, the most significant one was St Andrews when he went out in 29 and had that golf course by the scruff of the neck, and momentum halted, 67 in the first round eventually, which was only an average half-decent round. It looked like it was going to be something an awful lot better than that. And once that momentum was broken, Jacqueline's chances went west.
Now, we're going to get to your television life, your second life, let's say. But Henry Longhurst said something about Jacqueline's round there that I thought was very significant. He said, it's as if the gods of St Andrews have sent this rain to protect their course. And that's exactly what happened, because he was headed for a 62 or a 61, wasn't he?
Maybe even better, because he was playing high on confidence, and he'd got through the loop, he'd got the scores on the scorecard, and it was benign. There was hardly any wind, so the last 5 or 6 holes were nowhere near as difficult as they can be, so it could have been something even better than that, but Henry was probably right.
Another player that played in your time and that you've worked with in television is Peter Oosterhuis, who older South Africans would remember well, because I think he won our Order of Merit 3 times in a row, and he did pretty much the same in Britain.
He did 4 in a row from 71 until somebody from South Africa in 75 came over and I can't remember his name, big guy, not much touch around the greens. But you broke that run of Peter. He had 4 in a row there.
Well, the only reason I broke the run is he went to America.
That's being very modest, I think. But Peter was a fine player as well. Really should have won a major, came 3rd in the Masters, was very close at Royal Troon in the Open Championship. And in the end, it was the Canadian Open that he won on the PGA Tour. But Peter was a much better player, I think, than his record suggests.
Probably should never have gone to America.
Probably not, because Seve was about to pitch up, the European Tour was about to get momentum, but he went before that happened, so you could understand it.